Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today, we're delving into a very serious and sensitive topic, some of the most notable female offenders in the United States who have received the most severe sentences for their actions, including life imprisonment and the death penalty. From brutal murders to robbery gone wrong, these stories are as chilling as they are complex. Each execution has its own set of circumstances, offering valuable insight into the criminal justice system and its implications. Aileen Wuornos, State, Florida, execution date, October 9, 2002. Aileen Carol Wuornos was an infamous American serial killer who murdered 7 men in Florida between 1989 and 1990. Posing as a hitchhiking prostitute, she would gain access to her victims' vehicles along highways, shooting them at close range with a .22 caliber pistol. Wuornos initially claimed that the killings were acts of self-defense against attempted rapes. Her victims were typically middle-aged or elderly men who had solicited her services. Wuornos was arrested in January 1991, and her trial garnered significant media attention. Despite her defense claiming self-defense and highlighting her troubled past and mental health issues, she was convicted of 6 murders and sentenced to death. Wuornos was executed by lethal injection on October 9, 2002, at Florida State Prison. Her case has been widely discussed in terms of the ethical considerations of executing individuals with significant mental health problems. Last words. I'd just like to say I'm sailing with the Rock, and I'll be back like Independence Day with Jesus, June 6th, like the movie, big mothership and all. I'll be back. Last meal, cup of coffee, Teresa Lewis, State, Virginia, executed September 23, 2010. Teresa Lewis was involved in a notorious murder-for-hire case that led to her execution in Virginia in 2010. Lewis conspired with 2 men, Matthew Schallenberger and Rodney Fuller, whom she met in 2002. She planned the murder of her husband, Julian Lewis, and her stepson, Charles Lewis, to collect nearly $250,000 from life insurance policies and other assets. Teresa Lewis seduced both Schallenberger and Fuller and promised them a share of the insurance money as payment for committing the murders. On October 30, 2002, she left the door unlocked for the conspirators, who entered the Lewis home and shot both Julian and Charles while they were sleeping. Teresa Lewis waited several minutes to call 911, attempting to stage it as a home invasion gone wrong. Teresa Lewis was executed by lethal injection on September 23, 2010, becoming the first woman executed in Virginia in nearly a century. Her case sparked widespread debate over the appropriateness of the death penalty, particularly concerning defendants with intellectual disabilities. Last words. I just want Kathy to know that I love you and I'm very sorry. Last meal, fried chicken, peas with butter, apple pie. Lisa Montgomery, State, Texas, executed January 13, 2021. Lisa Montgomery committed a heinous crime that led to her execution in January 2021, marking the first execution of a female federal inmate in the United States in nearly 70 years. Montgomery's crime involved the murder of 23-year-old Bobby Jo Stinnett, a pregnant woman from Missouri, in December 2004. Montgomery, who had met Stinnett through a dog show chat room, traveled from Kansas to Missouri under the pretext of purchasing a puppy. Once inside Stinnett's home, Montgomery attacked her, strangling her to unconsciousness with a rope. In a gruesome act, she then used a kitchen knife to perform a crude cesarean section, cutting the baby from Stinnett's womb. Stinnett died as a result of the attack. Montgomery took the newborn girl and attempted to pass her off as her own child. The crime was quickly linked to Montgomery through digital evidence, leading to her arrest the following day. The baby was safely recovered and returned to her father. Montgomery was convicted of kidnapping resulting in death and was executed by lethal injection, concluding a case that drew significant attention to issues of mental health and the use of the death penalty in the United States. Last words in meal, not publicly recorded. Krista Pike, State, Tennessee, executed, still on death row, not executed. Krista Pike is the youngest woman to be sentenced to death in the United States during the post-Furman period. She was convicted of the brutal murder of a fellow Job Corps student in Knoxville, Tennessee in 1995. The murder was especially heinous and premeditated, evidenced by Pike keeping a piece of Slemmer's skull as a trophy. The killers were quickly apprehended after bragging about the murder to their peers. Pike was found guilty of first-degree murder and sentenced to death in March 1996. Her accomplices received lesser sentences. Shipp also received a life sentence, while Peterson, who testified against Pike and Shipp, was granted probation. Krista Pike remains on death row, her case a chilling reminder of the capacity for violence in human nature, often revisited in discussions about the justice system's handling of young offenders and the death penalty. Tiffany Cole, State, Florida, executed, still on death row, not executed. Tiffany Cole is one of the few women on death row in the United States, having been convicted for her involvement in a chilling double murder in Florida. Her case highlights issues of betrayal and premeditated violence. In July 2005, Tiffany Cole, along with three accomplices, Michael Jackson, Alan Wade, and Bruce Nixon Jr., planned and executed the kidnapping and murder of a retired couple, Carol and Reggie Sumner, who were 61 years old. The motivation behind the crime was financial gain, as Cole knew the couple from a previous car sale and was aware of their financial assets. Cole and her associates forced them to reveal their bank pins and subsequently buried them alive in the pre-dug grave. The group then fled with the couple's money, using their credit cards and draining their bank accounts. The crime was quickly unraveled by law enforcement, largely due to the use of the Sumners' credit cards and ATM withdrawals. Nixon cooperated with the police, leading them to the bodies and providing detailed confessions that implicated all involved. Tiffany Cole was found guilty of first-degree murder, kidnapping, and armed robbery. In October 2007, she was sentenced to death. Emilia Carr State, Florida, executed, still on death row, not executed. Emilia Carr is one of the youngest women to be sentenced to death in the United States, highlighting a case marked by jealousy and betrayal. Emilia Carr was convicted for her role in the 2009 murder of Heather Strong, in a case that involved elements of manipulation and revenge. The crime took place in Marion County, Florida. Carr, along with her co-conspirator and then-boyfriend Joshua Fulgham, kidnapped Heather Strong, Fulgham's estranged wife, in February 2009. The motive stemmed from a tumultuous love triangle, as Fulgham was involved with both women, and Carr sought to eliminate her romantic rival. The investigation into Heather Strong's disappearance led authorities to Carr and Fulgham. Both were arrested and charged with first-degree murder. During the trial, evidence of their planning and execution of the crime, as well as Carr's active participation, led to her conviction. In 2011, Emilia Carr was sentenced to death. However, her sentence was later commuted to life in prison without the possibility of parole in 2017, following changes in Florida's death penalty laws. Susan Smith, State, South Carolina, executed. Life in prison. Susan Smith is an American woman who was convicted of the 1994 murders of her two young sons in Union, South Carolina. Her case attracted national attention due to its shocking nature and the deceitful way Smith initially sought public sympathy by fabricating a story of abduction. On the night of October 25, 1994, Susan Smith strapped her two sons, 3-year-old Michael and 14-month-old Alexander, into their car seats in her Mazda Protege and drove to John D. Long Lake. There, she let her car roll into the lake, drowning her sons as they were trapped inside. Initially, Smith reported to the police that a black man had carjacked her and kidnapped her sons, leading to a massive manhunt and media frenzy. Susan Smith was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 30 years, which means she could be eligible for parole in 2024. Her case remains one of the most infamous instances of filicide in the United States, often cited in discussions about maternal crime and mental health in the criminal justice system. She is currently incarcerated at the Leith Correctional Institution in Greenwood, South Carolina. Susan Smith, State, South Carolina, executed. Life in prison. Susan Smith is an American woman who was convicted of the 1994 murders of her two young sons in Union, South Carolina. Her case attracted national attention due to its shocking nature and the deceitful way Smith initially sought public sympathy by fabricating a story of abduction. On the night of October 25, 1994, Susan Smith strapped her two sons, 3-year-old Michael and 14-month-old Alexander into their car seats in her Mazda Protege and drove to John D. Long Lake. There, she let her car roll into the lake, drowning her sons as they were trapped inside. Initially, Smith reported to the police that a black man had carjacked her and kidnapped her sons, leading to a massive manhunt and media frenzy. Susan Smith was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 30 years, which means she could be eligible for parole in 2024. Her case remains one of the most infamous instances of filicide in the United States, often cited in discussions about maternal crime and mental health in the criminal justice system. She is currently incarcerated at the Leith Correctional Institution in Greenwood, South Carolina. Jodi Arias, State, Arizona, executed, life in prison. Jodi Arias became widely known for her involvement in a high-profile murder case that gripped the nation. She was convicted of the brutal murder of her ex-boyfriend, Travis Alexander, in his Mesa, Arizona home in 2008. On June 4, 2008, Jodi Arias killed Travis Alexander with extreme violence. Alexander suffered multiple stab wounds, a slit throat, and a gunshot to the head. The evidence presented at the trial included highly graphic and violent crime scene photos, along with a detailed forensic analysis. Arias and Alexander had a tumultuous and intermittent relationship, marked by passionate reunions and bitter breakups. Jodi Arias was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole in April 2015. Diane Downs, State, California, executed, life in prison. Diane Downs is an American woman who was convicted of the attempted murder of her 3 children in Springfield, Oregon in 1983. Her case became infamous due to the shocking nature of the crime and her behavior before and after the incident. On May 19, 1983, Diane Downs shot her 3 children while driving in a rural area near Springfield, Oregon. She then drove to a nearby hospital, claiming a bushy-haired stranger had attempted to carjack her and had shot the children. Her daughter Cheryl, age 7, was pronounced dead at the hospital, while her son Danny, 3, was paralyzed from the waist down, and her daughter Christy, 8, suffered a disabling stroke but survived. Suspicion quickly fell on Downs as investigators found her story implausible. Evidence suggested that she was the shooter. Witnesses saw her car driving slowly rather than speeding to a hospital, and her gun, which she claimed was stolen earlier, was later found and matched the weapon used in the shooting. Furthermore, forensic tests showed she had gunshot residue on her hands, and her surviving daughter Christy later testified that her mother was the shooter. Diane Downs was convicted in 1984 on charges of murder, attempted murder, and criminal assault. She was sentenced to life in prison plus 50 years. Diane Downs briefly escaped in 1987, but was recaptured. She has been denied parole multiple times and remains a figure often discussed in studies of criminal psychology and maternal filicide. The added cases further highlight the varying circumstances of each execution and the diverse ways that individuals approach their final moments. Thank you for watching today's video. Please share your thoughts and comments below.